Namaste everyone and welcome to another edition of the Ramanand Sagar Ramayan review. My name is Pradeep and I'm the dad.
My name is Vishala and I am the daughter.
And hello Vishala, how are you feeling today?
A little sick, but...
Yeah, Vishala has been kind of under the weather lately. So if you hear a little bit of coughing or if you find she's feeling a little bit down, that's the reason why. So Vishala, what episode are we working on today?
Episode 7.
And what's the name of this episode?
Sita Swayamvar.
Right. The IMDB description says, seeking a suitable husband for his daughter, Janaka holds a Swayamvar. Kings and princes from all over come to Mithila seeking Sita's hand in marriage, yet fail to pass the King Janak's test of stringing the Shiv Dhanush bow. Now IMDb gives this a rating of 9.2 stars, which is a little bit higher than the other episodes that we did. Do you think it deserved a 9.2 stars?
I was upset for one reason, but...
Okay, we can get into that a little bit later. So you don't think it really deserved higher than the others?
Well, I mean, like, it was just at the very end. That's why I was upset, but I think, yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, I liked it. Honestly, I think it well deserved that. I think it deserved a little bit more than that. But we can get into that a little bit later as we talk about it. The original air date of this episode was the 15th of March, 1987. So Vishala, where can people view the Ramayan episodes?
YouTube, the link is in the show notes.
Yep, and we are posting it on our website as well, thehindupod.com, so you can check that. And like I said, in the show notes as well, they'll be posted. So what are your overall thoughts about this episode?
So like I said before, I was a little upset at the end because they didn't show Raam breaking the bow. And like, I really wanted to see that. Like when we watched it the first time, I'm not sure if you remember, I was like really upset because I really wanted to see it.
Yeah, so we were watching the episode and we get to the end of it and it ends just before Shri Raam gets the chance to pick up the bow, and Vishala was so upset she wanted to go immediately and watch the next episode. And I told her no, because I did not want us doing this review with her already seeing the next episode. I thought it would kind of contaminate her review of this one. So Vishala, as soon as we're done taping here, you could run right downstairs and you can watch the other episode if you want. So before we get into today's review, there's a short katha that I found in the Adhyatma Ramayan, and I thought it was very beautiful. So when Shri Raam and Lakshman and Vishwamitra were on the banks of River Ganga, and they're getting ready to cross, there was a boatman. They called him a Kevata. According to Veda Vyas, Shri Rama, Lakshman and Vishwamitra, they approached the boatman and they asked for a ride to cross the river. The boatman already knows who Shri Ram is, and he is so worried. Now, number one, he knows who Shri Ram is and he really wants to wash his feet. And he's thinking that, how can I do this? So he tells Shri Ram, I have heard of you, and I've heard that your feet touched a rock, and that rock turned into a woman. If I allow you to go into my boat, and my boat turns into a woman, then I would not be able to support my family, because the boat is what it is I depend on for my livelihood. But if you would allow me to wash your feet, then I can be sure that my boat would not turn into a woman, and then I can take you. Shri Ram looks at him and he smiles and he allows him to wash his feet, and then he takes them over the river Ganga towards Mithila. So I thought this was such a beautiful little story that was missed out in the TV show. I thought I would add it in.
Whenever I hear that story, people make it sound really funny, but whenever you tell it the way that you just said it, it sounds a lot more nicer. So,
well, there is a little bit of comedy in it, but you get in a chance, right? You see the Lord and you get in a chance that, okay, how can I do this? I really want to wash his feet. I really want to touch his feet. How can I go about doing this? And he thinks and he thinks and he thinks and he comes up with this excuse to be able to do it. And I kind of feel like if I saw the Lord and I could recognize him, because I don't know that I could. Even Santosi Das, when we did the Santosi Das Katha, we talked about Santosi Das is expecting to see the Lord. The Lord comes by and he is dressed as a prince with his bow and arrow and everything. Tulsidas sees him and still does not recognize that this is Shri Ram. So if Tulsidas cannot recognize Shri Ram, then who am I, right? But I would like to think that if I could recognize the Lord, that I would do everything in my power to be able to touch his feet as well. So Kevata gets to play this part here that all the rest of us, everybody else, that's a devotee of the Lord, would like to play himself. Well, having said that, are you ready to start with the review?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go on ahead and I'll jump in when I can.
The episode starts with the scene from the last one, as it always does. Ram is relaxing in his room and Lakshman's massaging his feet. And the scene switches to Sita with her sisters, and both Ram and Sita, they're restless and they're thinking about each other. And
yeah, so one of the things that I kind of wanted to point out here is we look at Sri Rama and he's there and he's thinking about Sita Mata, and Sita Mata is there and she's thinking about Sri Rama. And we think about our own selves in youth as we're courting, boys and girls are going out and that kind of thing. And what is really the difference between Sri Rama showing his love for Sita and Sita Mata showing her love for Sri Ram, right? There's really no difference. It's the same love that they feel, it's the same love that we feel. We cannot feel it at the extent that they do, because this is Sri Vishnu and this is Lakshmi Mata, and they have a lot more history, right? They're just acting a role. But for us as human beings, we can look upon this relationship and we can say in our courtship, if Sri Ram and Sita Mata can feel this way, there's nothing wrong in us feeling this way. The difference between them and us is the way we carry about ourselves in these relationships, right? If we can use them as the example while we're courting in knowing the way that we should carry about ourselves, then there's absolutely no problem in having feelings for, the person that you're going to get married to while that courtship process is going on.
one of Sita's sisters, I don't know which one it was.
So this was Urmila.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she questions whether Ram can lift the bow or not. And you can see in Sita's face, she's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And then surprise, surprise, who shows up? Ramanand Sagar. I felt so good to see him. I really did. I was doing a little bit of research on him, and I was very sad to find out that he actually passed away. I think it was in 2007. And so now whenever I see him, it just kind of brings back a certain warmth in my heart to be able to see him again. And the thing about him is whenever he comes, I like to hear his view on what's happening, because it's very enlightening to the rest of us to know what his thinking is in the creation of the show.
So he talks about Sita's feelings and how her restlessness comes from like her love for Ram, and no one is able to understand that love between Ram and Sita. But she might not be able to marry him because she can only marry whoever is able to lift the bow.
Yeah, I like the way that they phrased it. They said her restlessness is because of her eternal love, and her doubts are what covers the human mind like waves. So they try to portray this is what is actually going on in her mind. I thought it was a beautiful sentence, the way they phrased it. He talks about Rama and Sita, and they're being old lovers of the Shir Sagar. The Shir Sagar, of course, is the ocean of milk. In the first episode, we saw Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi Mata was there, right? Being old lovers of the Shir Sagar, meeting again for the first time in this incarnation, and the love between them. So you see them looking at each other and they're thinking about this time after all this time that they've been apart, they finally come back together. I think we kind of touched on that on our last episode as well.
When you hear that, like how long they've been separated and then now you're seeing them come together again, you understand it a lot better. It's like if you were watching it thinking that like this is the first time they were seeing each other and this is how they were looking at each other, and then you were watching it knowing that it's been so long since they've seen each other and now they're seeing each other again, I think you view it a lot differently.
And now we're looking at Sita and Shri Ram, and both of them, they're both thinking about each other. And Urmila and her cousins are there and they're teasing Sita Mata. But we notice that Sita Mata herself is not saying anything. She's being very quiet about it. And this is because she is bound by the words of Janaka. So Raja Janaka says that she will marry the person that can lift and string the bow. If Sita Mata were to start thinking about Sri Rama and start talking about Sri Rama in the way that the other girls are doing, then that would be improper for her if Sri Ram is not the one that wins the Swayamvar and somebody else becomes her husband. So that's why she's very quiet about what it is that's happening right now.
And Ram kind of had the same mindset too. Remember, he was saying how it's not his place for him to think of her in that way.
He also is very restrained. Yeah, he also is very restrained.
But when Ramanand Sagar, when he said when he started mentioning the conditions of the Swayamvar, I thought of this question. I was like, why can't Sita just tell King Janak how she feels about Ram? Because can't she just tell him, and I'm pretty sure he would understand how she feels and he could cancel the Swayamvar or something. So
he has already planned the Swayamvar. He has already invited other kings, other princes, right? There are gods that's taken the form of humans that is there. There's demons that's taken the form of humans and that are there. It talks about that in the episode. And were he to come and now say, okay, the Swayamvar is off and I am no longer doing this, and my daughter is going to marry to whoever it is that she picks, that will be an insult to all the people that's there, and it's going to be a black mark on the name of his dynasty, because now all of a sudden he's not a man of his word, right? He has originally told everyone to come, and this is what the conditions of the Swayamvar are. Come and participate, and the winner of the Swayamvar will be the husband of Sita. If he goes back on that's not going to be proper for him. That's why he cannot do that. So another thing he talks about, Ramanand Sagar, he talks about the difference in Sita's discipline and the restraint. This is, he's talking about the same thing you were just saying when Urmila and the cousins are talking and Sita is staying quiet, right? If you look at Sita's discipline and the way that she carries about herself, and we look at our own lives and the way we carry about ourselves in that situation, modern culture is that of self-gratification and of sensual pleasure. So we live our lives today and we do whatever we want, as long as it makes us feel good, as long as it makes us happy. And very little thought is given towards how does what I do affect my family? How does that affect my country? How does it affect my friends, right? Everything we say and everything we do, it has a direct effect on everything around us. But yet, in today's world, we don't think a whole lot about that. And the thought is, if we can practice the discipline that Sita Mata and Shri Ram is practicing here, how much different would our world be today?
So then it cuts to them preparing Sita for the Swayamvar, and Ram is somewhere else thinking about Sita, and Vishwamitra comes in and he tells them it's almost time to leave for the Swayamvar.
When Shri Ram and Lakshman. I thought this was so nice. It was so funny. Shri Ram and Lakshman is in the room, and Lakshman is talking to Shri Ram, and he sees Shri Ram is acting like he's all nervous, and he decides that he's going to give Shri Ram a pep talk. Right? And he starts to tell him about how great he is, and don't worry about it. You will be the one to win the Swayamvar and all of that. And Shri Ram is just looking at him, and he says, Lakshmana, the first thing we need to focus on is we need to focus on our duty. Okay? Don't worry about any other stuff. Let's just focus on our duty. And I love Lakshman because, listen, everybody else in Ramayan, they have a role to play, and everybody else is doing everything they can to play this role to perfection. Lakshmana is Sheshnag. And Lakshmana say, you all act, you all do what you want, I don't care about that. Shri Ram, you are my God. You are my master. And I don't care what it is I'm supposed to be saying. I don't care what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I am going to be serving you. I am going to tell you whatever it is I feel that you need to hear. And he just serves Shri Ram blindly. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter that he's supposed to be the Lord's brother and there is supposed to be, some kind of kinship there. He doesn't even care about that kinship. He's just here to serve, and he's doing everything he can to serve. If Shri Ram and Lakshman was not even related, Lakshman would be acting in exactly the same way that he's acting right now, just being a servant of Shri Ram. I just love seeing him.
And Lakshman, when Vishwamitra came in, Lakshman's talking as if Ram was participating in the Swayamvar. Like he was saying stuff like don't worry, Ram will, what did he say? He said Ram will win or something like that.
He keeps talking about, don't worry, you're going to win. So here's the thing, right? I was kind of confused because the whole time Vishwamitra never told Shri Ram he was going to participate, right? But Lakshmana is acting as though Shri Ram is in. That Shri Ram is definitely going to be taking part in the Swayamvar. So I decided, you know what? I need to get some clarification on this myself, because it seems to me I'm not understanding exactly what's going on. So did Vishwamitra ever actually tell Shri Ram that he was going to participate in the Swayamvar? Vedavyas has a version of the Ramayan called the Adhyatma Ramayan. And he says that Vishwamitra tells Shri Ram that they will go to Mithila. Raja Janak is performing a yagna, and they are going to go over there and they're going to witness the yagna. And once the yagna is complete, then they will go back home to Ayodhya. So he never says anything about any Swayamvar. According to the Adhyatma Ramayan by Vedavyas, there's no mention of a Swayamvar. So if there's no mention of a Swayamvar, then there's no way that Shri Ram would know that this is what he was going to do. It is when they get to Mithila, Vishwamitra tells Raja Janak about the stories of Shri Ram, about how he had defeated Tarika, he defeated Marich and Subahu, about the liberation of Ahilya. And when Janaka hears these stories of Shri Ram, he begins to realize that there is something special about Shri Ram. And again, like how we was talking about last week, he starts to realize that Shri Ram is that incarnation of that Brahm here on earth. And Vishwamitra tells him that he should allow Shri Ram to see that bow and to tell him the story of the bow. And again, Raja Janak tells Shri Ram the story of the bow, and he tells him that if you can string the bow, then I will marry you to my daughter. And he orders his servants to bring the bow, and he says that this bow is so big, so heavy, that it takes 5,000 of his greatest warriors to bring the bow just for Shri Ram to see it. And when Shri Ram sees the bow, he picks it up almost as though it was a child's toy that he's playing with. He picks it up and he starts to string it, and the bow cracks down the middle and it breaks. So according to Adhyatma Ramayan, there is no mention of a Swayamvar. In Valmiki Ramayan, there is no mention that Vishwamitra is telling Rama that he's going to participate. He only tells him that he's going to Janakpur and he's going to attend. Tulsidas in Ramcharitmanas speaks at length about the journey and the feelings of all those involved, but it is still not clear that Rama ever knew he was going to be participating in the Swayamvar. So it doesn't seem as though Vishwamitra ever actually tells Shri Ram, this is what I am carrying you here for. He carries him. Vishwamitra knows, he understands, he sees the entire picture, and he is like the puppeteer that is guiding all of these events to happen. So he takes Shri Ram, he carries Shri Ram there, and when he's there, then everything else transpires. Now the only reason I'm telling you about all the different versions of this story is that, like we had talked about, I think it was in our first episode, we talked about how many times the story is being told and retold, and every time it's a little bit different. So when we hear it from one person or we hear it from another person, we hear it from one Ramayana versus the other Ramayana, it's not going to be the same. So we shouldn't get too bogged down in the particulars of the story. Once again, let us just try to get the essence of the katha, and let us just try to walk away with the lessons that we could learn from these kathas.
So the scene switches to the beginning of the Swayamvar, and all the participants arrive, and they're all talking about like if they could lift the bow or not. Some say it might be hard. Some they're like talking about its past and people who have lived it before, or others say it's just gonna be easy. And Vishwamitra walks in with the princes, and participants are saying how Ram and Lakshman, they won't have a chance with lifting the bow, and like they're like making fun of them and calling them like names and stuff. So
also from reading the Ramayana here now, it talks about everybody being seated in order of their importance. And as you walk in, you see Raja Janak is already seated. The Queen Mother is already there, and she has her group of people there with her. All the kings are seated according to the seniority. And then once everybody else is seated, remember Vishwamitra is there to officiate. It says to venerate in one of the previous episodes. So he's there to officiate all of this. And once everybody is seated, then he comes. And he brings Shri Ram and Lakshman, and Janaka comes, he welcomes them, he gives them the seat. And once they are situated, who's the most important person in all of this? Sita Mata. So it is here that Sita Mata is called to come and take her seat. One of the things I liked when they were entering was there's a song that was playing, and the song was pointing out the difference of the persona of Rama and the other participants. Tulsidas Ramayan talks about this as well. Tulsidas says that Rama and Lakshman look like two full moons amidst the circle of stars. It says that each person that was seated there saw in the Lord the reflection of his own disposition. If they thought of him as a friend, they saw him as a friend. They saw this friendly image coming towards them and coming by and taking a seat. And if they saw him as a fiend, if they saw him as an enemy, it was the same thing. It was this scary persona that they saw walking down to take a seat. It says the great warrior kings saw him as the heroic sentiment that was personified, and the wicked kings trembled at his sight. There were participants that was almost heckling in the background, and they're talking about this Swayamvar is rigged, because they're looking at the way Janaka is looking at Shri Ram, and they can see that there is favor for Shri Ram. And when they see this, they say, this whole thing is rigged. Why are we even here? Right? And then somebody else in the background that said, what are you afraid of? 2 little children is going to come here and they're going to show you up? So it's that kind of bickering that is happening in the crowd.
So Shatana tells King Janak to call Sita in to take a seat. And so when Sita enters, she's looking around and she's trying to look for Ram. And when Ram, as she's passing, Ram sees her and he starts smiling at her. And then when she finally takes her seat, she sees him and then she starts smiling at him. And then there was another one of those really sweet moments that I love, where they're just smiling at each other.
Yeah, and thinking back on Ramanand Sagar's explanation of the feeling that they both had for each other, you kind of, when he says that, you can think about, okay, this is what they were going through in their hearts when they saw each other.
So soon Janak's servant.
The bards?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says the bards of Janak. Yeah.
They come in and they start singing about the greatness of Mithila.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards they announce how the Swayamvar works. And the crowd, they're watching the bow.
What do you thought about that song? They were singing in rap form?
Oh my god, yeah.
What do you say? It sounded like
Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, I liked it though. I thought it was cool.
So the crowd is watching. They're looking at the bow and probably in fear. And you can see it on their faces. They're like, wait a minute, was this a good idea? But then the first person, they approach the bow, and of course they can't lift it up, and everyone starts laughing at them. And a bunch of people, they come in doing things that were really funny to me, like flexing or just coming in with...
I'm a big, strong king. I'm going to come and I'm going to show you that I could break this bow. But this little bow, what are you guys talking about? Everybody here is just, they're not as strong as me. I'm better than everybody else. This is what, one by one, as they come up. And here's the thing, right? You're seeing all of these other people coming and they can't shift the bow. They can't do anything. And yet everybody behind them is still acting as though they're the strongest one and they can do it. It's almost as though nobody's learning any lessons.
Yeah, they're just walking in with proud and confident looks on their faces. And someone even came in with using one arm,
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they know the history of this bow and where it came from and stuff. I don't know what they're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So Sita's mother, she questions what will happen if no one's able to lift the bow.
Yeah, she has some concerns.
And when a lot of people, it shows a bunch of people trying, but they fail. And at some point, they just start to do random stuff, like most people lifting the bow at once.
Yeah, so, and you notice also there were some people that came up and just bowed to the bow and walked away. So, according to Tulsidas Ramayan, there's actually a little bit of explanation about this. So, Tulsidas talks about the different dispositions of the kings that were gathered there. He says that those of ignorance who could not recognize the Lord and thought of him as an enemy, they believed that they could break the bow themselves. So those would be the ones that you see come up and they were flexing and trying one hand to lift the bow and all of this, because they see themselves as being great, and they just see Sita Mata as just being a prize. But those who were there and could recognize Shri Ram as being something divine, being something greater than them, they could see Sita Mata as being the mother of the world. They could see Shri Ram as being its master. Those kings are the ones that simply came up and prostrated because they knew that it was not their place to even try to attempt to do this. Once they recognized what was happening, they came, they showed their respects, and they went back and they sat down. So it's not really explained in the episode, but according to the Ramayana, Sri Ramcharitmanas, this is what we were seeing there. He also talked about they started to come together to try to lift the bow, and Tulsidas also talks about that. It says that at one point 10,000 kings came together to try to lift the bow. Now I don't know how 10,000 kings are going to even fit around the bow to try to lift it, but this is what he's saying. 10,000 kings all gathered together and tried to lift the bow, and they all failed. And when Raja Janak saw this, Raja Janak put a stop to it. And we saw that in the episode as well. So those three kings kind of represented that 10,000 that they talked about, and Raja Janak stopped it.
Hearing you say that, I'm thinking like, wait, how many people were even there?
It was a grand event. It really was. I mean, what they depicted on television really doesn't do justice to the event as Sant Tulsidas describes it. Now again, the Swayamvar, the episode that we're seeing, is very much based on Tulsidas's recollection, on his version of this story. According to the Valmiki Ramayan, according to the Adhyatma Ramayan, it didn't happen like this, right? The Swayamvar is almost non-existent in the other versions. It is Tulsidas's version that has it like this.
So like you said, with like the 10,000 kings and stuff, when all that starts happening, King Janak, he starts to get upset, and he stands up and he starts yelling at, well, he wasn't really yelling, but he was like upset with everyone.
It was frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was frustration he was feeling. And the reason that he's feeling like this is, look, I have invited the most powerful that I can find. And this is where he says there are gods here that's in the form of humans. There are demons here that's in the form of humans. There are great kings here, the most powerful of you all. And are you to tell me that none of you, not one of you, have the ability to lift this bow? Right? And then he starts talking about the shame that his lineage would have to go through if nobody here can lift this bow. So he's concerned, number one, about his daughter, right? That she would not be able to find somebody. And then he's concerned about his lineage. He's concerned about his family. What will happen to my family now? We will have to live in shame if nobody can do this.
So at some point, Janak says how like everyone thinks they're so brave and mighty, and then Lakshman, he's like, what? Like he like looks up and he's like,
yeah, Lakshmana has had enough at this point. Janaka
so
is up there and he keeps talking, and Lakshmana is taking it personally, right? And he's taking it personally because not for himself. He's like, my brother is here, and my brother is the greatest among everybody else, and you want to come up here and you want to talk about how nobody here is strong enough, and you didn't even give my brother a chance as yet. You didn't wait to see if he can do it yet. Now nobody's told Shri Ram to go and do it, right? Up until this point, as far as we know, Shri Ram still doesn't know that he's going to be participating. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Lakshman, he stands up and he like everyone else is just like sitting down there looking down in shame, and then Lakshman stands up and he starts yelling about how great his brother is, and like how could you talk about him like that. And I love how Ram tells him to come back and sit down. He's like,
yes.
he's like Lakshman, what are you doing?
Yes.
So
come on, Shesh, know your place.
So King Janak says he didn't mean it in that way. Like he didn't mean
and Vishwamitra tells him, Lakshman, calm down. You saw that part, right? He said, Lakshman, you just calm down, okay? Come sit down.
We love Lakshman. Okay, so King Janak says how he didn't mean it in that way. Like he didn't mean to insult anyone, and he just sits down in disappointment. Mm-hmm. And so music starts playing, and Vishwamitra tells Ram to go try and lift the bow, and so Ram bows and obeys.
So at this point, so for me, I kind of saw it as Vishwamitra didn't bring Shri Ram to participate, but after hearing the words of Raja Janaka, he realizes that in order to save the reputation of Janaka, in order to save the reputation of Sita Mata, in order to save the reputation of this family, somebody has to go up there and do this. So he tells Shri Ram, okay, you now it is up to you to save the honor of this family. You go and you do it. Now, early on in the episode, I don't know if you remember, Lakshmana is talking and he tells Vishwamitra that the person that has your blessings to go and do this will be the one that will be victorious in lifting and stringing the bow. Right? And here we find Vishwamitra is giving Shri Ram his blessings to go up and string the bow. So it is the blessing of the Guru that allows Shri Ram to go and string the bow. Right? So again, we find the importance of the Guru in the story here.
So Ram, he walks up to the bow, and Sita is watching from like a higher area, and Ram looks up at her and he's like, "I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this for you." Like the way he's smiling at her is. So everyone starts laughing at Ram and for going and trying to lift the bow. And Sita's mother, she says how Vishwamitra is like making fun of them. She's like, she's distraught. She's probably frustrated. Mm-hmm. And she wonders if all these great people can't lift the bow, then how could Ram lift the bow? And then Sita just kind of looks at her like, no, no. And then then the episode just ends.
Yeah. So that's where you got upset, right?
Yep.
You wanted to see the actual lifting and subsequent breaking of the bow. You could run downstairs now and look at it if you want. But before we end, there's one more thing. So oftentimes you hear that Ravana had attended the Swayamvar. And so it's not in the episode. We don't see Ravan there. And I was personally curious as to whether or not Ravan did attend this Swayamvar. Now, I looked at the Shri Ramcharitmanas, I looked at the Adbhuta Ramayan, I looked at the Adhyatma Ramayan, and I looked at Valmiki's Ramayan. According to Ramcharitmanas by Tulsidas, Sita's mom makes mention that even Ravana and Banasur was unable to lift the bow, but there's no clear evidence. It does not clearly mention that Ravana was there. In Valmiki Ramayan, in Vedavyas Ramayan, in Adbhuta Ramayan, none of them I found any mention of Ravana being there at the Swayamvar. So maybe it's written somewhere else, but as far as I could tell, Ravana did not attend the Swayamvar. So that is something from time to time you hear people talk about that. And like I said, I couldn't find any evidence of that. So Vishal, tell me what stood out to you in this episode?
How everyone just came in thinking that lifting that bow would be easy, like knowing it's past, and then they just still came in and were like, yeah, I can do this. This will be fine. Someone said I could I'll lift this up like a flower, like.
Yeah,
and then
it kind of shows all of us, and they represent us, right? And we're all just engrossed in our own egos, and we don't see the big picture, and that's what's happening with them. These are all great, big, powerful kings. They're all engrossed in their own egos, and they think that I am the most powerful. You think you're big and strong, and you can't even lift this little bow. Watch, I'm going to come and show you. And it keeps happening over and over and over again. And those kings that are based in ignorance, they just never learn, and they keep doing the same things over and over again. Yeah. For me, it was Lakshmana and his adoration of Shri Ram. Lakshmana, he doesn't care what anybody else says. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. His Rama is the greatest, and he's letting Shri Rama know that, look, I find you feeling a little bit subdued today, so I'm going to come and I'm going to boost you up. I'm going to pump you up, and I'm going to tell you how great you are. I love seeing that. He doesn't care about what drama is happening around him. He doesn't care about what the storyline is. He is going to be Shesh. He's going to be Shesh no matter what. And he's going to serve Shri Ram in the way that he sees most fit. I loved when they're in the court, and Janaka is speaking, and then he just has enough, and he stands up, and you can see, this actor that's doing Lakshmana is doing such a marvelous job. I love this guy. Him and Vishwamitra, my two hands down favorite performers in this episode. You can see the fire in Lakshman's eyes when he get up. You can see this Sheshnag is standing there and he's defending his lord. It was such a beautiful thing to see. What did you like in particular about this episode?
The same thing you just said.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I like it because of like the way the actor like portrays him, or if I like him. Like I like him for like what he does, the way he like how loyal he is to Lord Ram. But like I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because of the actor or if it's just like because of the character. But I really liked him in this episode.
Yeah. So for me, I liked seeing Ramanand Sagar again. For some reason in my head, I feel like he was there more often. Now looking at it again, this is only the second time we get to see him. He was in the first episode, and now we get to see him again. And especially now knowing that he passed away, his work just means so much more to me. That he produced this and we were all able to enjoy it. It was very nice seeing him. And like I said, hearing his views on the scripture and listening to what he says kind of gives you a more clear understanding of what it is he's trying to portray on the screen when he when he shows up and he gives you his review of the Ramayana. So I really liked seeing him. Is there anything that you particularly disliked about the episode? And I don't mean that you didn't get to see the next one. I mean about this episode.
Nothing particular, no.
So in researching for this episode, one of the things I kind of disliked about the way they portrayed Sita's mother, Sita's mother seems to be as though she's lacking in faith. She seems to be very despondent about what's happening here. And according to the versions of the Ramayana that I read, it actually talks about her as a hopeful character. He talks about her looking at Shri Ram and feeling that love for him and feeling, happy to have him there and being hopeful that he would be able to do it. So I find that the way that she is portrayed in this, I would have preferred to see her portrayed a little bit differently. That's the only thing. But honestly, I loved it. I thought this episode was really good. And just like you, when it ended, I was getting so worried coming to the end because I'm looking at how much time we have left and all the things that need to be done. And I'm looking at it like, no, they are not going to allow us to see this. And sure enough, they didn't. But I am looking forward to the next episode that we're going to see. And I cannot wait to sit down and talk with you about it. For those of you in podcast land, if you want to reach out to us, tell us your feelings about this episode, just send us an email at thehindupod@gmail.com. That's thehindupod@gmail.com. We would love to hear your views on this. And we will even talk about it, about your reviews of this episode as well, if we feel like it applies. So Vishala, you think there's anything that we missed, that anything we need to cover?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we got it. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It has really been a pleasure. We are starting to really get into the main story of the Ramayana now, and it is really a joy being able to watch it and talk about it. This has been a presentation of the Hindu Pod. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and rate this episode. You doing that really helps to bump us up in the feeds, and that is what helps others to find the podcast. We look forward to seeing your comments at thehindupod@gmail.com. If you want to text us, you can do so at 281-804-9616. You can also call that number and leave a voicemail, and we will be happy to share your thoughts on the air with everybody else. You can search for us on Facebook. Just go to Facebook and search for the Hindu Pod. If you live in the Houston area, you can find us on most Sundays at the Sanatan Dharam Mandir. That's the Sanatan Dharam Mandir. There is a link on the show notes that if you want to link directly to their Facebook page, you can do that. They are located at 12918 Player Street, Houston, Texas, 77045. And we are open on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. This podcast is sponsored by HinduHandcrafts.com. It is our own website, and the proceeds that we get from that is what we use to finance our spiritual work. So check us out at HinduHandcrafts.com and buy something. And until next time, Jai Shri Ram.